She forgot where she put her keys. Her family laughed it off. She got confused driving to a store she had visited for 20 years. They said she was just tired. She stopped calling her grandchildren by the right names. They told themselves it was normal aging. It wasn't. By the time she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, the signs had been there for nearly 3 years. 3 years that could have been used to prepare, to plan, to get help, and possibly to slow what was coming. Here is what her family didn't know. Forgetfulness is just one of the early symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. And often, it isn't even the first one. Today we are going to cover the 5 most critical early symptoms that families miss most often. And I can almost guarantee that by the end of this video, you will recognize something you have already seen and wish someone had told you sooner. Welcome back. I am so glad you are here today, because this video could genuinely change how you see a loved one, or even yourself. Most people believe that Alzheimer's begins with forgetting names, losing objects, or repeating stories. And yes, memory changes are part of it. But here is what the research tells us that most families never hear. The earliest signs of Alzheimer's disease often have nothing to do with memory at all. They show up in personality, in judgment, in language, in how someone handles money, navigates familiar places, or reacts to people they have known for decades. And because these changes are so easy to explain away, she's just stressed. He's getting older. Everyone does that. They are missed. Month after month, year after year. Today that changes. We are going to go through all 5 of these early symptoms, clearly, compassionately, and honestly. Stay through to symptom number 4, because that is the one that almost always surprises families the most. Let's begin. Symptom 1. Difficulty with familiar tasks. We start not with forgetting, but with struggling. In the early stages of Alzheimer's, people often begin to have difficulty completing tasks they have done hundreds or thousands of times. Cooking a recipe they know by heart. Following the steps to pay a bill online. Operating the television remote they have used for years. It isn't that they forget the task exists. They know they want to make dinner. They just can't quite sequence the steps the way they used to. Something in the process gets muddled, skipped, or abandoned. This is one of the earliest and most telling signs, and families almost always chalk it up to distraction or a bad day. It is rarely either of those things. Think about it this way. If your loved one has made the same Sunday morning breakfast for 30 years, and suddenly they are standing in the kitchen not knowing what comes next, that is not tiredness. That is a warning sign that deserves attention. Comment below if you have noticed this in someone you love, because you are not alone, and recognizing it is the very first step. Symptom 2. Problems with language and word finding. Have you ever noticed a loved one stopping mid-sentence, searching for a word that seems just out of reach? Or substituting an unusual word for a common one, calling a watch the thing on my wrist, or a pen, the writing stick. This is called anomia, difficulty retrieving words, and it is one of the earliest language changes in Alzheimer's disease. It goes beyond the occasional tip of the tongue moment we all experience. In early Alzheimer's, it happens frequently, in everyday conversation, and the words that come out are increasingly unusual or indirect. Families often notice this as the person becoming quieter in group settings, withdrawing in group settings, withdrawing from conversations, but because the language is becoming harder to access. This withdrawal is painful and quiet. The person often knows something is wrong. They feel the gap. They just cannot bridge it. And so they pull back from the conversations and connections that matter most to them. If someone in your life has become noticeably quieter in group settings over the past year, please keep this in mind. It may not be shyness. It may be something worth exploring. Symptom 3. Poor judgment and decision making. This symptom is one of the most heartbreaking, and one of the most dangerous if missed. Early Alzheimer affects the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for judgment, reasoning, and decision making. This can show up as financial decisions that make no sense, giving large sums of money to strangers, falling for obvious scams, making impulsive purchases they cannot afford. It can also appear as poor hygiene decisions, wearing the same clothes for days without noticing, skipping bathing, or dressing completely inappropriately for the weather. The challenge is that the person themselves often cannot see that anything is wrong. Their judgment about their own judgment has been affected. This is why families sometimes feel like they are watching someone become a different person. Because in a very real neurological sense, they are. This is also why people with early Alzheimer's are so vulnerable to financial exploitation and phone scams. Their natural skepticism and protective instincts have been quietly eroded by the disease, and they have no awareness that this has happened. If you have noticed unexplained financial decisions or dramatically unusual choices in a loved one, do not dismiss it. Document it, date it, and bring it to a doctor. And wait, symptom number 4 is the one that research shows is present in up to 70% of early-stage Alzheimer's cases, and yet almost nobody talks about it. Symptom 4. Withdrawal from social activities and hobbies. Think about the hobbies and social activities your loved one has enjoyed for decades. A weekly card game, Sunday church, a garden they tended every season, a sport they played or watched with passion. One of the earliest and most consistent signs of Alzheimer is a quiet withdrawal from these things, not because of physical limitation, but because the cognitive demands of following a card game, participating in conversation, or keeping up with a hobby have become subtly overwhelming. It is easier to say, "I'm tired," or "I'm not feeling it anymore," than to admit that the thing you loved has become confusing and exhausting. Families rarely identify this as a symptom. They respect the person's choices. They assume it is aging, introversion, or preference. But when the withdrawal is new, progressive, and broad, across multiple activities and relationships, it warrants serious attention. The social world that once energized them now feels like too much. The garden they loved now overwhelms them. The card game they played for 20 years now confuses them. And rather than say so, they simply stop going. Drop a yes in the comments if you have seen this in someone you love, because it is one of the most commonly missed early signs in the entire world, and your response might help another family watching right now. Symptom 5. Difficulty understanding visual and spatial information. This is the one and it is especially critical for driving safety. Beyond getting lost in familiar places, early Alzheimer's can affect the brain's ability to process visual and spatial information. Reading becomes harder, not because of eyesight, but because the brain struggles to track lines of text. Judging distances becomes unreliable. Distinguishing contrasting colors gets harder. Driving is where this often becomes most dangerous. The person may misjudge the distance to a car ahead. They may have difficulty with depth perception at intersections. They may struggle to read road signs quickly enough to respond safely. This is not a vision problem. It is a brain processing problem, and it is one of the reasons that driving assessment is a problem. Critical part of any early Alzheimer's evaluation. Families often notice small signs first. A dent on the car that wasn't there before. A slow, hesitant approach to familiar turns. A reluctance to drive at night that is new. These are not simply the caution of aging. They may be the brain's spatial processing beginning to fail. If you have noticed any of these signs behind the wheel, please take them seriously. A driving assessment by a qualified specialist is not an attack on independence. It is an act of love for everyone on the road, including your loved one. These 5 symptoms together paint a picture that is far wider and more nuanced than the simple strangle Alzheimer's people associate with Alzheimer's disease. And knowing them, truly knowing them, gives families the power to act sooner. Now let me speak directly to your heart for a moment. If you recognize something in this video, if even one of these 5 symptoms describes someone you love, or even yourself, please do not let fear stop you from acting. Fear is understandable, but awareness is power. An early evaluation does not mean a sentence. It means information. It means options. It means time to plan, to prepare, to connect with support, and to make the most of every day while that is still fully possible. The families who act early are the families who are most able to walk this road with grace, with preparation, and with love that is informed rather than blindsided. If you are a caregiver who has been watching these symptoms and feeling completely alone, you are not alone. Millions of families around the world are on this exact road with you right now, and sharing what you know, asking for help, and seeking an evaluation are not signs of giving up. They are acts of profound and courageous love. Here is your one action for today. If you recognize 2 or more of these symptoms in a loved one, write them down right now, with specific examples and approximate dates. Then bring that written record to a doctor. It is one of the most valuable things you can give to the evaluation process. If this video gave you something valuable today, please hit the like button. It tells the platform that this information matters, and it helps it reach the families who need it most. Subscribe so you never miss a video in this series. We cover everything from early brain science to caregiving strategies to the very latest in Alzheimer's research. Share this video with someone in your life who may be noticing changes in a loved one and not knowing what they mean. You may be giving them exactly the clarity they have been searching for. Drop a comment below and tell me, which of these 5 symptoms surprised you most? Or share something you have noticed in someone you love. Your words may help another family watching right now who desperately needs to feel less alone. Thank you for being here. Take care of the people you love, and I will see you in the next one.